Hello, welcome back to Bebop Review. My name's Andy Shaw. Today we'll be looking at this video by Jens Larsen, who is a Danish jazz guitarist. This video is called The Truth About Avoid Notes and Target Notes. I kind of disagree with some of the things that Jens Larsen says, basically about tensions and things. So we'll just go through the introduction, what Larsen says, and then I can talk about it, okay?
There seems to be some confusion about what avoid notes and what target notes are when it comes to improvisation, even mixing them up. So I thought it would be a good idea to show you which one is incredibly useful and which one really isn't, because in a way, they're the opposite of each other. When I was starting to learn jazz, I was actually taught both along the way. And for me, one helped me build an essential skill for jazz, while the other one was something that I knew, but it just never really made any sense to me. Usually avoid notes are defined as the notes that create tension against the underlying chord. The most common example would be playing an F over a C major 7.
Right, that statement's wrong, actually. He says it creates tension. An avoid note is a note that creates tension on the underlying chord, but that's not the Berkeley method. That's not the method that I was taught. A tension is a note that doesn't obscure the function of the chord. Adam Neely was talking about it in one of his videos.
Now, chord tones are the four basic notes that are prescribed by the chord symbol on the lead sheet. For C major 7, we have C, E, G, B. Simple as that. Next, we have the tensions. Now, tensions are not part of these four chord tones, but they don't serve to obscure the basic chord sound for reasons that we'll get into later.
So if you listen to Adam Neely there, he says a tension is a note that doesn't obscure the basic sound or function of the chord, right? Now, an avoid note is something totally different to a tension. An avoid note is a note that creates dissonance within the chord, right? And so you avoid it. You don't avoid tensions, but you do avoid notes which create dissonance. And the note F on a C major chord creates dissonance, right? The note D doesn't, it's a tension, and the note A doesn't. Let's just take a look at this on a music sheet through Sibelius, okay? Okay, so I've written a tune out in Sibelius, right? This is the tune here, and I've harmonised it basically completely incorrectly, as far out as you can, pretty much. With these major chords here, it cycles back. It's just a tune that runs round and cycles back in whole tones. I've done it like this so you can hear better. So it's going C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? If you look at the harmony, right? Well, I'll just play the tune. This is what the tune sounds like. Right, that's the tune. Now, I've harmonised it with either a minor second, right, between the seventh and the root. So that's the melody's got the root look, and it's harmonising with a minor second there. These two notes, right, are the third and seventh of the chord, because these are the two notes that identify the chord. So I've omitted the root and the fifth, right, so you can just hear better. So you've either got the root of the chord, right, against the major seventh, which is called a minor ninth interval, or you've got the fourth of the chord, like this G here, against the third, which is this F sharp here, look. So this G, and that's causing a minor ninth interval, right? Which also sounds bad. So if you listen to this music as I play it along, it sounds like something you'd get in a horror film, you know what I mean? See, that's like something you'd get in a horror film, wouldn't it? That it's not something you want to be playing, right? Now you can get rid of that quite simply by just changing these chords. Instead of playing major 7 chords, stick to earlier jazz, which you see. The trouble with this is now, mostly nowadays, you always get C major 7 chords and not C major 6 chords. And the reason for that is that it's a modern sound, and people want this modern sound. But if you listen to the way the piano players were playing during the swing era and the early bebop era, you get C major 6s or just C major chords, But a lot of people today say that's an old-fashioned sound. We don't want it. We want C major 7. So that's basically where you got all these C major 7 chords now. Personally, the thing is I like old music. I like bebop and I like old swing and that. So I don't really mind C6 chords. I think they sound quite nice myself. But anyway, let's change these to C. We want to keep this melody, see, and I just want to keep this diatonic movement. So we'll change these to 6 chords, which have got a root, right, where the root is the problem. And where the 4th is the problem, I'll change them to minor chords, okay. Okay, so I've changed these chords to 6 chords, right? If you look, anything that was a root, I've changed to a 6 chord. I've just dropped the 7th down one. And anything that was a 7th like that, I've actually changed it to a minor 7th, right, to get rid of it. So this should sound quite well now. As you can see, it sounds quite good, that. It doesn't sound like that horror movie thing I've just showed you. I just want to show you something else very quickly. If I change that to a 4th, so it's an F, right, on this last chord, I'll just rechange this to a major 7. This is a major 7 chord now. Right, that's going to sound bad in it. Right, it's going to sound bad at the end. Just listen. So it's sounding out, but if we change that to an F sharp, so we're playing Lydian now, it should sound all right, shouldn't it, or better? Listen. Yeah, it sounds better, that, doesn't it? Because you haven't got that minor 9th interval between that E and F sharp. The thing is, if you put that. If you put the 3rd in, you're gonna have a tritone between the harmonic. That C, the first harmonic, is another C, and you're gonna get a tritone between that, and you might hear beats, even though it's a harmonic. Listen. Yeah, you can hear at the end those beats. That second the first harmonic, sorry, or the second note, right? Above that C, which is playing there's another C playing as a harmonic. It's created a tritone and it has sharp. It's sounding a little bit dissonance. So even if you're playing Lydian, you've got to watch it. Now, if you put that C down an octave, so the piano player isn't playing the C, but the bass is playing the C, which you would normally get. It should sound all right or better, because what's happening now is it's reacting with the 3rd harmonic, right, from the bass. So that's going to be a G, and G to F sharp is a major 7, which isn't going to sound quite as bad, is it? Let's have a listen. Doesn't sound as bad, does it? It's just you're just getting the bass notes sounding a bit higher, but you haven't got that beating like you just had before. So I thought I'd just show you that as well. That. You've got to even watch it when you're playing F sharps. You're playing Lydian. You've got to watch out for beats. Producing, notes that you don't want. Notes are not sounding how you want them to sound. Okay. Okay. So Jens Larsen's saying here that you've got basically 2 dissonance. So he's saying dissonance. He's saying it's a dissonance, right? This F is causing dissonance. So it's kind of like he's saying it is an avoid note because it's dissonance. But what it is he doesn't agree with the term avoid note, right? He thinks it should be called something else. He just doesn't agree with it at all, because you can play them on beat, as he shows you later on, which we'll be looking at. But basically, what he's saying is there's a tritone between there and there's a minor 9th interval for that E, right? The thing about this is that is a void note in that situation, that F. But if you put a G there, right, and you're saying that this is some kind of voicing on a G7 chord, then a 7th chord has a tritone, doesn't it? That's what makes it a 7th chord. And what the note that would be out, the avoid note, would be that C. So it's how you look at it as well, how you're looking at the chord and how the voicing is, you know what I mean? It's something... You don't get this so much in jazz, but you do get it in arranging music. You're seeing things like this and looking how the music's working. So sticking a G in there and seeing it as a G, not as a C major 11, but as some kind of G7 chord, would make that C an avoid note. Do you know what I mean? We talk about a note that you hold on to and sounds dissonance against the rest of the chord, you see. But seventh chords, they do stand a lot more tension than hotels. Let's just carry on.
But really, any note that creates tension would be an avoid note. It's probably clear that I don't find thinking in avoid notes very useful, and the reason for this is actually quite simple. When it comes to improving your playing, there are some essential things missing. It doesn't tell you anything about what to play. If you take the common example...
Oh no, just stop there. Yes, but it does tell you what not to play. He's saying it doesn't tell you what to play, but it does tell you what not to play. So he's making out as though it's a waste of time thinking about it. But, you know what I mean? Thinking about an avoid note is telling you that you shouldn't play it. Do you know what I mean? Because it'll sound bad if you hold on to it.
Of F as an avoid note over a C major 7, then the only thing that tells you is to not play an F, which is not really useful information.
Again, I don't agree with this. Berkeley method doesn't teach it like this, not what I've seen. It doesn't say don't play it. It just basically says it's an avoid note because if you play it, you'll get a dissonance, and if you hang on to it, this dissonance will be bad. It doesn't say don't play it. I mean, you can play it. You can play it as a passing note. You can play it on beat as what's called an on-beat passing note, where you play it for like half a beat, which is an American eighth note, and then resolve. You know what I mean? So I disagree. The way I've been taught music is not like what he's saying. Don't play this and don't play that.
You want to solo, you're much better off thinking about what you should play. You also don't drive a car thinking about not hitting something, because hopefully you're thinking about where you're driving. It doesn't describe the music. If avoid notes make sense...
See, I don't agree with that. He's saying that you're being taught to not think about these notes. You know, you said you're taught not to think about... You should be taught about what to play, and you shouldn't be taught about what not to play. I just don't agree with that. I don't think it's like that at all. He's making out as though tensions and avoid notes, or you're going along and you hit something because you're not aware of what you should be playing. And I just disagree with that. I just think that's wrong.
Then surely nobody uses the avoid notes in their solos, but at the same time I was given a ton of examples.
You look at those notes. This is Kansas City Blues by Charlie Parker. He goes ba da ba ba da ba ba da 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 da. See, that note is a melodic note, so it's a good one that he's showing you here. We've got a C7 chord, not a C chord, so this is called a special function dominant. You've got what it is it's from the C7 really belongs to the key of F, but it's operated as a tonic chord here, and he's hitting that F, so that F is definitely against that C7 chord as natural harmonies. You mean F is in the scale of F major, and so therefore it is called an avoid note, right? If it was a chromatic note, not in the scale of F major, which that chord comes from, you'd call it a non-harmonic note, right? Not an avoid note. Well, that's how I was shown anyway. Right, so this F, but look, it's only half a beat. It's only an eighth note. You know what I mean? That's all right. You're playing an eighth note, you're resolving. Eighth note resolve. These are resolving. Look, that's resolving to that. That's resolving to that. We've got any more seeing. Let's have a look down here. There's probably a lot anyway. But, you know what I mean? That's not a problem, really, because it's of short duration. I don't really think that he understands what tensions and avoid notes are. Let's just carry on, and I'll just explain it in a minute.
And transcribing solos, and it doesn't matter if it's Joe Palmer.
See, that's another situation. This is Charlie Parker. This is from Now's the Time, the fast version of Now's the Time, so it's 1950s version. And this note is a B flat against the F7. Now, you can't take these chords as gospel, because it's Charlie Parker comedy book, which is pretty inaccurate, right, as far as chords and everything goes. So I won't say that. Now, Parker is probably playing something different there. This is basically moving in. So the note that he's really playing is that C. If you've heard of David Baker's book, he says make the middle note the chord tone. So that's the chord tone, right, which does fit with that. And this B flat is just elaboration, right? It's not actually acting. That what I've just showed you in Now's the Time, that was acting as a melodic note, right? But it was in resolve. This is just kind of like an on-beat passing tone. It's not part of the tune. That's the tune. Now, I don't think that's very good. you don't see that often in Charlie Parker's music. That should be there on beat 2, right? I'm not saying it should be there, but you're almost certainly going to see it on beat 2. If anybody's seen my criticism of David Baker video, I showed you that virtual beboppers play this line, this M2 there, right, not there. So it could be that Parker is either spilling this beat. This should be belonging here, and the F chord starts here on that A, right? So that really belongs there. So everything should be shifted. Does that make sense? Could do. Could do. But it might be bringing it back in. It looks like he's brought it back in there. So you don't know with that. You've got to be careful. That is something that you don't see M2 being played on a beat 1. It's usually on a beat 2, right? On what's called a weaker beat, right? Either beat 2 or beat 4, right? So another thing, right, about that is that if you look at what Parker's playing there, I know we're going F, D, 7, G, but it looks like he's treating these as all minor. Is it minor 2, 5, 1 kind of thing? And all those notes, can you see that note don't make sense, does it? B flat on a D7, that's an augmented fifth. So I think what he's doing is he's just playing in G harmonic minor. If you look at all those notes, they're all in G harmonic minor. Is there any E flats? See, we haven't got an E flat to tell us exactly, but that all looks like just playing around G harmonic minor. It's actually a line through G harmonic minor. So this would be, I don't know, some kind of alterations what he's thinking to get that augmented. Okay, so I've just spent a couple of minutes looking at this, and it's definitely in G harmonic minor as far as I'm concerned. So he's not playing a normal 2/5 to get to that. This is all G harmonic minor. You see this chord here, it's not D7. If you look, it says B flat, D, F sharp, B flat. Right, that is chord flat 3 of G harmonic minor, which is B flat augmented, right? And that's what he's playing. It's just a B flat augmented trad. He's playing it descending. So there's definitely, that should be out, and it's B flat augmented. So this could be something else, you know what I mean? So we're just playing in G harmonic minor. So like I said, you can't look at these chords in the Charlie Parker Harmony book and say, oh, that belongs to that. You know what I mean? That just looks wrong to me. Playing that B flat in an M2 there, when you almost always see them on beat 2 or some other weaker beat. You know what I mean? So you know what I mean? What I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to get you to think about this a different way. Okay, so we'll just carry on. He's just talking about different players who use void notes on beat.
Their solos, even if they don't sort of really sit on it for a longer period of time. So that never really made any sense to me. It was not only a rule that I couldn't use to make music, it also seemed like it wasn't actually true. To me, avoid notes is the same as teaching people not to use a hammer because that isn't the right tool, instead of teaching them how to use a screwdriver, which would be the right tool if you just bought something in IKEA and you want to put it together. And it is really obvious that you benefit more from thinking about what to play instead of thinking about what not to play. So focus on playing notes that sound good and making melodies that work with, for example, the arpeggio of the chord, rather than thinking about not hitting a specific note in the scale. It's almost like telling you, don't think about a pigeon. The strange thing about target.
Okay, he's going to talk about target notes. I disagree with what he just said there. You know, this analogy about not thinking about, you know, an hammer. It's teaching you to use an hammer which you can't use, and it's teaching you not think about a pigeon. That's not a very good definition of tensions. I'll try and give you a definition of avoid notes and tensions, so you've got a better idea than what he says, because I just think that's rubbish what he's just said. Okay, so this is my definition of a tension and avoid note, right? I've done the chord C major 7 here so you can see, right? Now, you've got the avoid note. It's that one there, that note there, see? The F. These are tensions. It's funny, but this also you could say is a tension, the 7th of the chord. We call them 7, but in the early days when they first started using, that actually become a tension, which you were adding. But we'll just call it part of chord tone now, and we'll look at this D and A. Now, a chord tone, you can set, you're operating a spanner. Let me just tell you about spanners. Spanners are made certain lengths, so you don't put too much torque, because when you're pressing on this, you're putting torque on here, right? Force times distance, torque. Against that nut, it's creating a moment of force, right? And if you put too much torque on there, you're going to break that nut. See that nut there? Or you could damage the head of the main screws. Let's say this set screws. Because most screws are made out of mild steel. If you put too much torque on, you will break the mild steel. So they make these a certain length. So this is a smaller length. You get what I mean? So you don't break it. So that could be called a chord tone. So everything's in harmony in a way. A tension is if you get the same thing with these notes, but if you put in more torque on, because this length is longer, you've got a longer length here. Right, so you're putting more torque on, so you're putting that on stress. You're putting that on stress, so it's not a chord tone, but it's not affecting the manner of the chord at all. You see, the thing about tensions is they're actually in the function of the chord, right? So the function, say this is C major, which is tonic function chord. So the other tonic function chords would be A minor, which would be A, C, E, G, wouldn't it? So A, C, E, G. You've got the A there, you see, that's part of it. And if you look at the second one, which is E minor, which is E, G, B, D, you've got the D, you see. It's the part of the actual sound of the chord. Right, but F isn't. F's not one of them. And it's creating this function because all these dissonances which it's making between the E and the B, like Jens Larsen says, right? So these are tensions because they're not doing that. They can actually sound really nice. So you can make chords that way. You can call them C6 chords, can't you? You can make chords with knives which are like C9, you know, which connects the D. So a tension is something different. It puts stress on there. It changes the sound, but it's not. It puts stress on there, but it's not. It's not destroying the sound. Now, an avoid note is something different. A void note is like you put in a spanner on this note, right, tighten this screw up, but it's massively, you're putting far too much tension on here, right, because this length is far too big, right? And what you do is you ended up breaking the screw there and creating a dissonance. If you break the screw, you're creating dissonance. So that's basically what it is. Now, you can actually play the avoid note, can't you? Well, how would you play it? Well, what you would do is, instead of putting your hand here at this point, right, and pressing there, and you've only got a long spanner, just press there at that point, which is the same length as the chord tone length. So just play it. Basically, what you're doing is you're kind of like playing the note. Sure, I know it's not so good because you can play chord tones longer, but what I'm saying is, you're not putting stress on the beat because what you're doing is you're playing it shorter. In this situation, you're using less torque. See, this is a torque here. Torque, but it's a little torque. That's a torque, and it's a big torque, and that's going to damage it and cause dissonance. But if you do it there, and you just play it for short duration, then you're not going to get dissonance much. So if you play it either shorter or you resolve, you're not going to get the dissonance as much, is it? So I think that's a better way than is you look at something and not think about it, because basically you do think about avoid notes, right? I mean, it's just silly saying that you're taught not to think about them or not to play them, not to think about it, because I haven't been taught that. I've been taught to think about them and look at them different ways, you know. So that's how I see tensions, right? So this F is okay as long as you shift that down and play it for short durations. Let's go back to what he says.
Notes is that it isn't really about the notes. It's about playing towards them. Anything can be a target note. That's really up to you. You can even make an avoid note the target note. And sometimes that's a great thing to do. I'll show you that later in the video. In general, we often hear music as movement, so there's a flow and there's a direction. You can hear how this works.
This is correct what he's saying now. You can use avoid notes as target notes. Chromatic Parker does it in voice leading. But he doesn't hang on to the notes. This is the main thing. You can use them as target notes, but he doesn't hang on to them. Let's carry on.
With Bach.
I don't know why they always keep saying Bach.
And here the melody is moving forward and aiming for the target notes,
like Bebop,
repeating a similar structure or motif to make it clear when you hit the target note on beat 1 of the bar.
That is
And
not
this
like
is one of the
Charlie
things
Parker.
that really link
Let me
bebop
pause. That playing you've just heard is nothing like Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker's approach to music is completely different to that.
and Bach, playing the movement and linking to the chord. Take this Barry Harris lick.
Charlie Parker doesn't really play like that either. That's a bebop line from Barry Harris. I call that a second generation bebop line. But it's actually playing a tune. It's not really solo, is it? So I wouldn't accept that as a good example from Jens Larsen.
Where he's clearly aiming for the 5th of C minor 7 and uses the B diminished to really add momentum on the G7 that resolves to the C minor 7. So when you talk about target notes, then you're talking about something that you can actually find in the music, which, as you may or may not know, is how I usually like to think about valid music theory. Something that describes...
What's he using there? It looks like... I can't see what book he's using. I wish he'd tell you what book he's using.
Describes the music that we play. And it's also a way to develop your playing. Whatever target note you choose, you can sit down and practice to make lines that hit that target note, gradually moving.
We've got a voice leading line that's going up. Bebop usually goes down. So
From composing
not something I'd want to play.
lines to improvising them. And in that way, internalizing that skill and learning to solo over chord changes. And this is important to be able to do, so let's go over a basic example of how that works. I'll demonstrate this the way that I learned to use target notes from a teacher, but actually Hal Galper wrote a book on the topic that's definitely worth checking out. It's called Forward Motion. I'm just using this approach because that's
Forward motion is one way of looking at it, not the whole story.
how I learned, and it's worked for me and also worked very well for my students. Target notes as a strategy works because you play melodies that are actually going somewhere. They have a direction. They're trying to get to some place.
I don't actually disagree with what Jens Larsen said here, but what I would say is that that's not the whole truth. Hal Galper and all this target note stuff, it rejects chord scale theory, whereas I wouldn't, certainly not in bebop, because I've just showed you that Charlie Parker in that solo on Now's the Time uses, obviously, that he's thinking in G minor, harmonic minor, and Hal Galper says chord scale theory is a load of rubbish, you know what I mean? It's just all target notes and playing around it. With that, don't really add up with Charlie Parker. Okay, so Jens Larsen's basically now talking about target notes, which are basically like guide tones, which are driving you through the music. And initially, the chord tones, so you move from chord tone to chord tone, but then you can move through different tones, and these are void notes you can move to. But I certainly wouldn't land on a resting chord, right, like the end of a phrase, which is not a chord tone. It's much better to land on some kind of chord tone or very nice tension, like a 6 or something. Okay, so I just want to show you something in the Charlie Parker book, which actually I'm not talking against him now, what he's saying. I'm just saying that there's different approaches, and I just want to show you a solo by a little bit of a solo by Charlie Parker, and see if you can work out what Charlie Parker's doing. Let me just show you. Okay, I want you to have a look at this and see how you would analyse this and look at what Charlie Parker's doing here. So it looks a bit strange. We've got these two chords, G minor going to C7, and then it's resolving on F there. So this is a 2-5 a 2-5-1 in F, isn't it? And it's this what Charlie Parker's playing here. See, it kind of it don't quite make sense. This is on page 17 of the Charlie Parker book, and the tune is Scrapple from the Apple. This is right at the end of the tune. So it's a bit awkward to see what Charlie Parker's doing there, because all these notes don't seem to match those chords. So what would Jens Larsen say? He'd say, well, these are all avoid notes and things that you're playing. Look, and there you've got that M2 look on beat, you know what I mean? Is it there? Is it something else? You know what I mean? So you have a look at that. If you've got the Charlie Parker book, just stop this video now and have a look and see if you can tell me, well, or tell yourself, because I'm going to show you how I see. You might say it a different way. See if you can see what Charlie Parker's doing there, what that's all about. Right, this line here. Is it a scale? He's using some scale, or what is it? Some kind of voice leading line? Is it looking for target notes like Jens Larsen said, or is it some kind of substitution? if you look at it from target notes, I mean, you've got the B flat, which is in the key into it, G flat, that don't fit. You've got a G there, so I can only see two, that B flat and that G, going down to F, so they would be the target notes. So you would get a target note off the beat, which seems strange, and then a target note there on the beat. But what's happening here between here? Because it's all wrong notes, isn't it? Okay, so I'll let you pause the video and have a look, see if you can work that out for yourself. Okay, have you seen that? Have you had a look at it? Right, this is how I see this. Okay. Okay, so looking at this phrase from Scrapple the Apple, I'll just show you where it's going. It's going to F major here in the Charlie Parker Harmony book, and the last note there is a C. Like that. So if we look at it from target notes and actually going somewhere, you have to look where target notes are. So basically, with Charlie Parker, it's looking at voice lead, isn't it? So we've got a note there, we're running down to that B natural there, which is actually against that. It's not really with that G minor chord, because it should be B flat. Then we've got this B flat here, and then we've got another B flat, going to A flat, going to G flat. This is M5B, but it should go to F, which is that one. So this is just a variation to put that off on a different beat, and then this is running down to C. So basically, that's what it'd look like if you were looking for target notes. Basically, that's the voice leading. That's how I see it anyway. So like the target notes would be the B natural and the B flat on the A flat probably, and this G flat here and F. But it's all part of voice leading line. But they're not actually chord tones going along with these notes, are they? I mean, that B there, if you talk about that being a target note, it's not going with that G minor. And that A flat there, right, is not going with C7. The B flat is, and that is M2, remember. So this is, let me just write these lines down as what they are. So this is M4A. And it's kind of going into this line here, which is M3B. So M3B would have a different thing. M3B could have a big line starting from F, so it would all fit that. This is M2 just here. See this? This is M2 elaboration on that B flat. And then we've got M5, what is supposed to be M5B here. Oops, sorry, M5B, which should go to that F, but we've got this extra in. And what this is doing is it's kind of like making it into a changing tone that is changing, right? So instead of going on the beat with that F, we're actually going on the beat with a G instead. So he's in a way, he's avoiding the F. See that F? See that F there, right? That should be there in M5B, as you all know, but he's put in this extra line by jumping this line up, so he gets it off the beat. So now it works out harmonically, that G and that E with that chord C7. So in a way there, Charlie Parker is using this as an avoid note and avoiding playing it. Okay, so that's the way Jens Larsen should see. He should be able to explain that, why is Charlie Parker putting M5B there but not playing it, because he's avoiding the F intake. So he's using it as an avoid note in that situation, right? Because everything's driving the voice leading, you see. So he wants that to be off the beat. That's what I see anyway. Right, but there's another way you can look at this. I mean, Jens Larsen said the whole truth, and that would be kind of like the truth. I don't know if he'd analyse it like that. You'd have to ask him. But he'd said that's the whole truth. And then there's different ways of looking at this. Let's just realise that, and we'll have a look at it a different way. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it, isn't it? By looking at it through voice leading and seeing the targets as voice leading lines, but not chord tones, voice leading lines, right? Or you could see it as, you know, if you want to go like the Jens Larsen way, you know, as chord tones. Well, if you look at it from these notes against these chords, which is like the standard chords, I suppose, of Scrapple from the Apple, they don't quite match, does it? I mean, B doesn't go with that G minor because it should be a B flat. You've got B flat there, look. Then you've got these notes are a bit hard. You've got this A flat against this C7. We got augmented fifth, which didn't work, although you've got a B flat there. But he'd say, well, you know, you can play it on beat because you can play any note on beat. You know what I mean? You can see it like that if you want. And then you've got this E flat here, which is a minor third. So you could say it's blues if you wanted. I don't know. But it's a bit messy trying to work it out. You know what I mean? Just by looking at it against those chords. And an easier way would probably to look at it as some kind of substitution. So you could say, well, you know, we're in G minor up to here, up to that C there, and then from here to that B flat, that could be A flat minor 7. So we kind of like dropped half a step. We've gone from this G minor and we've dropped down half a step. Let's just write that in. So half step downwards, which is dotted lines, isn't it? And then you could say, well, this here, Charlie Parker's actually thinking up to that E flat. He's thinking D flat 7. Right, so now we've got perfect fifth movement to that D flat 7. And then you could say, well, this here, from this E to there, is actually C7. We've got a half step drop down, and then that C7 is going to that F in that next, you know what I mean? In the next bar. So you could look at it like that as well. So this is an alternative way of looking at it. And Jens Larsen is saying the whole truth about music, which don't make sense because you can look at something and see different ways of looking for it. In fact, I think there's another way you can look at it, and that's just from a pure scale point of view, really, if you want to. Let's have a look at it from a pure scale point of view. You could say that this, from here to here, is some kind of A flat Dorian scale, and a D flat mixed Lydian scale, and then this here, just these few notes here, G flat, right over here, you could say is a blues, some kind of blues scale. You know, I mean, you could look at it from a blues scale. This is a tetrachord, so this is actually in G minor, isn't it? G A G C D E F. Yeah, you could look at that as just C major from there. It's just C major, isn't it? That it's kind of like C. We're moving from C, so we are C there. So you could say it's C mixed Lydian or whatever. You haven't got no B flat, but you could say C mix. So you could actually look at it from a scale point of view and analyse it as Charlie Parker's playing some weird scales. I don't think that's what's happening, but I'm just saying it's another way of looking at it. So I've just showed you 3 ways of looking at it, and you know, which are different to looking at each individual note and saying Charlie Parker's playing out. You know what I mean? He could be thinking something completely different. You know. So I hope you've got a little bit out of that. So we'll move on now and look, see what else he says.
Works because you play melodies that are actually going somewhere. They have a direction. They're trying to get to some place. You're not just playing another note into the void.
You see, the Lydian Chromatic Concept, George Russell would argue against that. I mean, in the Lydian Chromatic Concept, Reed Gratz goes on for pages about how the major scale is this horizontal scale that is pushing the music forward. It's always wanted to get somewhere, you know what I mean? And I was arguing in that video series that the major scale doesn't really do that. You know, and I showed you a bit from Dedo and Aeneas, Percival's opera in Dedo and Aeneas, which it doesn't sound like it's driving, and it's still pretty, very pretty, you know what I mean? Music doesn't have to drive to be pretty, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to do what he's saying, I don't think, anyway.
First thing you want to do is to choose a target note, and if you're new to improvising over changes, then you want to take notes that are very clear and easy to hear. This is just because that makes everything easier to learn and also helps you hear how the chords are moving. But as I already mentioned, you can really target any note that you want to, which of course often ends up being something that you can hear, because otherwise it's very difficult to make lines that make sense. For a 2-5-1, the easiest place to start is to use the third of each chord. Clear notes that define the color of the chord. We take a look at a 2-5-1 in the key of C major, then you have these chords. And if you take the third as a target note, then you would have these notes through that progression. And now you can practice composing simple melodies that take you from one target note to the next. And I'm sure you can imagine that you have lots of options in terms of melodies for these target notes. Here's another basic one. And if you start to be able to do...
If you look at those lines he just showed you, it's all about a voice leading to me. It's about that F going to that E. So that's the target, you know what I mean? That D minor going to that. He's saying others, but I just see it as that, and these are just all colouring the line. So that's his target lines. It's all right. It's very beboppy, that.
This not only when you're composing lines, but also improvising, then you can start to use the same target notes in other octaves. Again, just because we want to expand on what we already know, and you can build on something that you've already checked out by doing it like this. And then you can start opening up which notes you use. After the third, then the fifth is a great option. Here I'm using that on the C major 7. And from here you can...
That's a weaker line, because the voice lean is going up. You don't really want that in bebop. And also you've got a classical type changing tone here. So I think that's a weak line. I'd avoid that if you're playing bebop.
Gradually start to learn to use other target notes. It's essentially the same process. Figure out what notes you want to hit and work on composing lines that end on those notes. See what works and give your ears time to get used to the sound. You can also gradually start to add things like other sounds on the dominant chord or extra chords. Having that direction in your lines will make a lot of things easier to get to work. As I mentioned earlier, then you can take any note as a target note. Also a target note like the F over a C major 7. And a basic way to do this could be something like this. As you can hear, I treat the F...
Right, this line is using M5B there, but he's got it backwards. I wouldn't play it like that. You might see it now and again in bebop, but not very often. You see, what he wants to do, he wants to show you that F, but mostly in bebop, that F would be there on the where that one is, and this would all run up. So that E, see that E there, that becomes on beat, and this would be quite a bit away. So it would go bo ba do ba da. It would have a strong rhythmic feeling. It would sound better than what he's played. That's a pretty weak line, I think. You've got the voice and it's going from that F to E, but it could be stronger, I think, that line. Right, if it was like jumping off and then, you know, using more rhythm. See, there's not much rhythm there, is there? Bo ba do ba do ba do ba do. Let's have a listen to it again.
This. As you can hear, I treat the F...
Yeah, that's a very weak bebop line, that, I think. My opinion. I'm just giving you my opinion. I think that's very weak.
As a suspension and resolve it to an E later in the bar.
That's
and that's
true,
simply just
but he's
because
got it
the
wrong.
F sounds the way it does.
Let's go back. He's got it wrong. That should be there, and that should be there. Right, and this should be something down here, so it's really off the beat, and then it goes pow, and you're bashing it. Ba-do ba-da, boo, ba-do ba-da. That's how it should sound. He sounds pedestrian the way he's playing. He's written that line out. To me, it does. It just doesn't, just not very nice at all, I don't think. Okay, so I've just written Jens Larsen's line out over 251, so you can listen to it. Now, this is how I'm listening to it, and why I think it's wrong is, it starts off all right. It goes da 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 da. Then you've got this line that's running down da 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 da, and then it jumps up to this A, right? So the voice line is going from that G to that F, but then it goes da da, and then that's hit on the beat. So instead of it going bo ba do ba da, it's going da 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 da. It makes it sound like it's two little lines, da da da, instead of this being one line. Just listen how it goes. Yeah, that's going da 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 instead of ba do ba da. You know what I mean? Just listen to it again carefully. You can really hear it. It's going ba 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 ba. It shouldn't do that. Now I've written out a line myself. I'll just play you this line. I'm just going to switch this over. Right now, what I've done is I've just written similar lines. Started it off same as this. Can you see? Started off the same, but I've decided just to alter it slightly. Try and give it a bit more rhythm by jumping these notes down. So this is more kind of like a more of a boppy line. So if you listen to this now, but listen to this end. I've using chord tones here. I'm just running up from that B, using a leading note, going up to that C there, and it just sounds a lot better. This ba do ba da. It gives it more rhythmic feel. Just have a listen. See, that's going ba do ba da. That's how it should sound, Bebop. Not like the way he did it. Let's just play speed. Play it to about 130. I wonder if it might sound better if you play it faster. Let's play. This is mine. Right, this is faster. Now it still sounds rubbish. You've got that line that's going boo-ba, boo-ba. It sounds like two lines instead of one line. It should be boo-ba-doo-ba-da. So he's actually got that wrong, and if you listen, I don't think he listens to Charlie Parker as much as I do, because I could tell that didn't sound right straight away. So the line I've done, I think that line's a lot better from me, which I've just like composed. But I'm just following what Charlie Parker does. He plays that off the beat and then comes on beat there. I've just put a chord tone there, so I'm just using chord tones. I think it sounds better than his. What's my voice leading line? Well, the voice leading lines are going from this G sharp to that G, because this is M5B, and then this is just jumping down to another M5B, so it's going G sharp, G, F, E flat, E. So you've got very good voice leading that line as well, which is again much like Charlie Parker. So I thought I'd just show you that. Okay, so that's the end of the video. So basically, I just want to say something else that he doesn't say there. I'm not saying don't listen to what he's saying. You know, I personally think that you should think about avoid notes, right? I think you should think about minor ninth dissonances and tritone dissonance that you could cause and anything. Depends what music you're playing. In bebop, I would definitely say you've got to listen to it. I would say one thing that I really would emphasise much more that he's not just doesn't seem to be doing it, and that is you must listen to the great players of the music that you want to play. Right, you've got to get into the music you want to play, and that means listening to the great players. I've just listened to that line I've just showed you from him, and just listen to it. To me, it sounds wrong. It sounds wrong because I've heard Charlie Parker, Bud Powell, Clifford Brown, Sonny Stitt, all the great players. That's how I was brought up. I just listened to those players. I just know them inside out. And that phrase just sounded weak compared to how they drive the music. And, you know, he's going about driving, but that wasn't driving, you know what I mean? Because you want the rhythm. So you really, I must emphasise that you really must get into the music that you want to play, right? I'm talking about bebop, but it doesn't have to be bebop. Any music that you really like, listen and listen and listen and listen and listen, right? And you will become an expert on that music, I'm telling you. Because when you start playing lines and you listen to Charlie Parker and you play lines, you think to yourself, I am not sounding like Charlie Parker. And then you ask yourself, why? Why am I not sounding like Charlie Parker? And then you look in the music and you start seeing it. But you've got to be listening to the music and get what it should sound like, okay? And he didn't say that. He's talking about, it sounds to me like he's just saying, oh, just play around with stuff and you'll end up coming. It won't come like that. You've got to get into the language. I mean, if you go to like Spain and you're learning a language, right? You know what I mean? You're much better off actually listening to the language all the time from people who speak Spanish than you do getting a book and start reading from a book, because you won't get the accent, you just won't get it right, you know what I mean? So I really must emphasise that. I just want to say one more thing about this before I finish off, before you all start think I'm being really nasty to Jens Larsen, which I'm not being. I just want to say that I actually think that his site is very good. I think I would definitely recommend that you watch his videos on music, because he comes out with some really good stuff. I'm being super critical in my video. It's basically because I didn't like what he said when he says the truth about anything. I don't believe there's a truth in anything. You've just got to look and find the truth yourself, you know what I mean? I certainly wouldn't tell people to believe anything I say, right? I just put in across my opinion, right? So basically, I wouldn't say don't watch Jens Larsen. This is definitely not a negative video against his site, because I think it's very good. I think his videos are very good. They're very well made, and his bebop stuff, you know, it's all really good stuff as far as I'm concerned. I'm just like super critically analysing it because he kept saying it's the truth, and as far as I'm concerned, there's all different ways of looking at music, and that's basically what I wanted to say about this video. Okay, so I'll see you in another video. Bye.